I'm very happy right now because I'm working currently with Grails every day, so it makes me very happy nowadays. So, what is this talk about? Well, this talk is about why I do testing, why most of the people must be doing testing. So, do we need testing really? Well, yes, I think so because we are not perfect, and it's not so important that we are not perfect. That we already knew that. It's more about when do we realize that we have committed the mistakes. Most of the time, it's simply too late. Okay, so when we realize we just have that kind of phase. So why I do testing? The first thing I thought is doing testing could make me more perfect as a programmer or make me flawless, but that's not simply true. Because in fact, it reminds me every day that I'm really bad programmer, so I have to improve every day my skills. Of course, the other thing I thought it was, well, maybe they can protect my application 100%, avoiding bugs, but that's not true either because they cannot protect your application, but instead they can help me to detect them before it's too late. Okay, so I'm going through a Grails application, and I'm going to show you what I normally do when implementing a functionality in the application I'm working with. Well, the first thing I normally do is integration testing. Why first? Because I think important things in my application should be in the services instead of the controllers. So the less code in the controllers, I think, is the better. So I think that is one important rule to do in your application. Just keep it simple, and if you have something really complicated, keep it in the services. So what do we normally test in integration testing? Well, normally we are going to be testing external systems such as database, web services, queue systems like Rabbit or JMS, and anything in between. So what are the weapons that I normally use when testing my applications in the integration layer? Well, of course, I will be using the Grails inbuilt integration test, which is based in JUnit. I really encourage you to use the interactive mode, which is available since version 2.0. And if you are still in some previous version, I really encourage you to migrate those applications to at least 2.0. And of course, the Guard plugin, which is based on the interactive mode, which is going to save you a lot of time. So it's very important to keep in mind that using the interactive mode, especially when you're doing testing, you're going to save a lot of time. Apart from that, I'm not very fan of using every plugin that come across. So I stick to Spock, the Fixtures plugin, and the build test data. Spock for everything, almost everything, and then for using persistent in my testing, I would be using Fixtures and the build test data. I'm going to explain you why. Well, the good thing about the Grails integration test is that it comes by default, of course, but also if you come from Java, that is based in JUnit. So if you have used JUnit, you will be more comfortable doing testing in your Grails application. Of course, when you are doing integration tests, the application is up and running. So it's very important to keep that in mind because you can inject your services in your test. Again. It's important to keep in mind that always that you are doing any kind of testing in Grails, you better use the interactive console because again, it's going to save you a lot of time. So what can Spock bring us doing the test? Well, for me, the most important thing is that the testing is going to be more natural, the way that we explain or we are coding the test. And it's very important because I'm a lazy programmer and I don't usually document my code. So I have found that using Spock, I can be documenting my code and also be coding at the same time. So it's very important. The other thing we will see, the parameter tables is especially in controllers are very useful because we can pass any kind of parameters to our controllers, and it will be easier to test my controllers that way. And I have already told you that it helps you to document your code. Doing integration tests is especially about doing persistence, and most of the time in our Grails application we are doing integration tests for testing the persistence layer. So for me it had been very useful to use the Fixtures plugins and the build test data plugin. The first one is more for trying to create common data sets instead of repeating over and over again the same lines of code, trying to build an object and then persist it in the database. The latest one, the build test data plugin, is more than when you don't really care about what the object has, what the values of the objects has. It's just that give me a valid persistent instance and that's it. I don't care what the values are. So there you have the URLs of all the plugins, and I'm going to show you some code about this. Okay, first of all, I'm just going to show you that, of course, if you have already worked with Grails, if you just say Grails integration, Grails test app. Thank you, Andres. If you are doing just this, it's going to take you a while just to start the bootstrapping the application and then running the application and then running the test. So while it's running, because it's going to take a while, I'm going to show you one integration test. Okay, so event contest service integration spec. Okay. So for example, here we have a typical test. We need to save an object, and then we are going to build. This is an object that we need to build the object we are going to test, and then we have one of the most important features of Spock, which are the parameter tables, where you can establish what the parameters are going to build the object, and maybe some other values to see if the test has passed successfully or not. So, for example, let's see if, well, it took a while, so I'm going to start the interactive mode, and I'm going to change some code just to see how it fails. Okay, so test API integration. The first time we run in the interactive mode is as slow as it should be if you just run it through the console. But once you have run it, then it's going to be faster. So we are going to see that the first time it's a little bit slow, but then it's going to, okay. So now it's failing because I have just make it fail, and I'm just going. And next time it's going to be much faster. Just okay. So always try to use the interactive mode. The other thing I was just saying is about the Fixtures plugin. Here you can see that I have built an object, and if I had to do it over and over again, there will be a lot of lines of code. So instead of repeating myself, I can just use the Fixtures plugin, and the only thing I have to do is just to reference the common data set I'm using for this testing. I'm going to show you what it looks like. Fixtures, this is, I think it's this one. So here we are building an object, and we can use it in any of our tests along our application. So it's very useful. So let me see. So again, I'm going to see if everything keeps okay. Okay, test pass. So we have seen that Spock is very good for passing parameters. And the other thing I just mentioned you is about commenting your code. Spock is very nice to just commenting your code as long as your example here. You can see that this test is just about adding a context to a given event, and then I'm just saying that there is a setup where I'm just loading some data, then I'm checking that the event is present, then I'm just building the context with the parameters underneath, and then I'm just going to try to add the context to the event. So it's pretty obvious what the test means. Okay. So once we have finished doing the integration test, which is more about persistence, or most of the times are about persistence, I'm going to pass through the unit testing, which may look like the easiest one, but it's not that easy in the way that we always try to do a lot of code in the unit testing. For example, we must not try to use the services. Most important, we cannot use the services as we use it in the integration test. So we have to do some mocking. We have to try to simulate the behavior of the service in our unit testing. So what are we going to be testing in our with our unit tests? Well, most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, controllers, maybe some tag clicks, and maybe URL mappings, just to make sure that we have mapped a certain URL with a given controller. When testing a controller, the typical case that came across is what the output view is going to look like. If everything went wrong, what happened with the view, and if everything went okay, the same. And of course, maybe in the way we can be testing if the user should be some message or not, or just the message should be a successful message or just a failure message. So what are the weapons I'm usually using in my unit testing? Well, most of the time it's about Grails mocking. So using the mixins that we have in Grails in unit testing just to test controllers without the real services, because we cannot inject our services. Well, we can, but we shouldn't. Okay, so we must be using instead the mixins to make sure that we are just testing the controller and not the service. And for doing that, we must learn to create expectations. So, and of course, we can continue using Spock tables to test our controllers, because as we have seen, controllers are all about passing data to the controllers to see if the controller is going to fail or is going to succeed. So, some code about unit testing. Thank you. Okay, here we have a unit testing. We are testing a controller. We need to save an event, and here we have some parts of the test. First of all, we are using this mixin test for mocking the behavior of the controller. That way we can access some scopes that we normally don't have until we have just started the application, such as the request, the response, and so on. So doing that, I can access things like, let's see here, the flash scope to see if the controller succeed, and there is the success message. So apart from that, we have here that we have mocked the service, and we haven't used the actual implementation of the service. Just we have create an expectation, and then we only need to have like a saved event. Then we have a block of code to pass the parameters to the controller, and then we call the action. Once we have called the action, we can just make sure that everything went okay, and the actual URL that we have been redirected to is the right one. Okay. So I just want you to notice that, for example, in this particular case, we are using the build test data plugin, which is very nice because many times during unit testing, you just need to create an object, and it has to be valid, and it has to be saved by the persistent. So this one, apart from creating you the object, you can save it, and it's going to work. Okay. Okay. Last but not least, the functional testing is important because it's what the user is expecting from our application. So it doesn't matter if we have just waste a lot of time doing unit testing or integration testing. That Mr. Greach, how Sebastian said this morning, is not going to be very happy, and he doesn't matter about how hard was the development, and he only cares about what happened with his application. So it's very important to do the functional testing. And what do we have in Grails for doing the functional testing? Well, for me, the most helpful plugins that came across were the functional testing plugin and Geb. And I normally use Geb instead of the functional plugin. It's just a matter of if we are using JavaScript in our application, the functional testing only uses HTML unit, but Geb, because it uses Selenium, you can be using any kind of browser. No matter what. I mean, you can use it testing by HTML unit if you are testing in your locally, but if your user is using Firefox or Chrome or whatever, you need to be testing your code in those browsers. So it's important to use web because of that. And apart from that, it's also important to use Geb because it's a way of abstracting your functional testing. The first time I started doing functional testing with Geb, because it's pretty similar to jQuery, the way we are just accessing the different parts of the thank you. Because it's very easy to use in the jQuery style to access the different parts of the web page. I started doing like a spaghetti code, and I was saying, okay, I'm accessing to this, and then I click, and then I go to that other page. But in the end, it was very messy, and it was really hard to maintain. So I changed my mind, and I started looking at Geb with another eyes. And to do it very, very well, and to do it at least accurate, you need to be using, which in Geb it's called pages. Yeah. So let's see some functional testing. So for example, here we have a functional testing. It's just how to create a context so the text actually goes to the browser. Insert some values in a form, and then clicks the submit button here. And then, because the controller must redirect the user to the view page, we need to be sure or make sure that the context view page has been reached, and it has the proper data. So all these values here and all these fields are something that we map in what we call pages. So for example, if we are going to the contest create page, and we actually look inside contest create page, this is how it looks like. I don't know if you can see it very well. Well, okay. So every page has a URL where the integration, the functional test must go. Then there's some block that you want to check when you are reaching the page. So for example, when we are at this URL, we must be sure that there is that title in that page. And then we are just mapping some of the fields using kind of HTML jQuery style to access those fields for, I don't know, maybe just checking the values, or maybe just inserting data because it's because they are fields from a form, and we want to fill the form, submit, and then see what happened. So, so again, if we are in the interactive mode, just we will be calling the functional mode, and all the tests will be running. There is one more feature that I really like from Geb, is that right now we are not seeing that a browser is open and then it's just surfing through the page because we are in headless mode. But the nice thing about Geb is that it stores the actual navigation. So for example, if we have run the contest Geb spec, or maybe here the dashboard Geb spec, he just stores like a picture in HTML of what he have seen. So that is the picture that the test has seen when he was it was reaching the dashboard page, for example, the web page. So you might have seen all these tests has been running very quickly because we are in interactive mode. In any other way, we will be wasting a lot of time. There are some inconvenience on the interactive mode, but it has to do more with the integration with functional testing and Grails. For example, if I change some code, at least in this version, which is Grails 2.1, if I change some code and I try to run again my functional testing, it's going to fail. But I think it's more because some cleaning that has to be done. So I will probably need to restart the interactive mode. But for example, if I just run the GAR plugin test app, what the GAR plugin does is that it's listening to any change to your, in this particular case, it has to do with integration test, not functional test. It listens to any change to your code, and every time you do a change in your code, it's going to run your tests again. So for example, if we go again to any integration test and do some change to make it fail, we will be seeing GAR taking care of it and just showing that something has failed. So again, if we just fix it and then go back, it will run again all your tests, which is pretty good because it's very productive, I would say. Okay, so let's back to the presentation. So we have been going through the unit testing, the integration test, the unit testing, what the plugins are, what are the plugins that I am usually be using at work, and And then the functional testing. I didn't know if I had time for finishing with JavaScript, but the thing is that I think I've been very fast in my presentation. But I just wanted to say something about JavaScript because we don't normally test it, and it's very important to test it, especially nowadays that we are just focusing in some stateless applications, and right now with web mobile apps and stateless applications are very in a hype. We need to make sure that we are testing our JavaScript, and I just want you to know that we have some tools in Grails for doing that. Okay, we have some plugins. For me, the most important one is the Jasmine, which is just a pure testing framework. And Jasmine plugin and the Angular JS are based in what we call the resources plugin. So you can just add the plugin, configure your resources, your static resources to work with the plugin, and then you have like a controller where you can see all your tests passing. Okay, for example, Jasper.js, if you know what Jasper.js is, it's just environment. It's more than just a testing framework. It's more than an environment where you can test, unit test more, will be more accurate, unit test your JavaScript unit test. So this one is not in the Grails repository, so I just put the URL of the guy who did it. It's pretty cool. It works very well, and so far I have been testing it with 2.0 and 2.1, and it works. So I recommend you just to have a try. Okay, so yeah, I think I've been very fast, but if you have any question, I will be glad to answer you. Mm-hmm. Well, I have just changed the code, and it just noticed it, and it ran again. So, well, yeah, I know what you mean, because I was just talking about functional testing. Yeah, but if I was just running integration tests, the thing is that it's made for the integration test, not for the functional test. In fact, if with functional tests there are some issues, and you are not going to be as productive as you do GAR with integration test. So I recommend it for integration test. And there is another issue with the GAR, is that you can see it's still listening. You have to kill the interactive mode to stop it. Okay, if you were running GAR from the console without starting the interactive mode, once your test has passed, it just stops and it gets out from the interactive mode. Okay. Any other question? Okay. Well, thank you very much. I hope you have enjoyed, and I'll see you around. Thank you.